Welcome to the B2B Word of Mouth Marketing Podcast. We're here to help you grow your business with the one form of marketing that really works.
I'm Bill Bice, and we're here because we believe inside every small business is a big business.
Hi, this is Bill Bice. I am here with JP Clement. Hey, JP.
Hello, Bill. Thanks for having me.
It's particularly great to have you because JP is the new CEO of boomtime, which is awesome for me. Welcome aboard, JP.
Well, thanks, Bill.
So we've been on kind of an interesting journey the last year and a half since you and I connected. So you moved to Albuquerque because you wanted to be in a different place. Give us a little bit of that history of how you ended up being someplace that you and I, where it was easy for us to end up meeting.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a long story, but I'll try to make it short and interesting. I lived in California for about 27 years, 22 of them in LA and 5 of them in San Francisco. And I got married about 10 years ago, very close to 10 years ago. And when we decided to have kids and had kids, my wife and I thought that it would be a better idea to raise them in a more rural and quote unquote normal setting compared to Los Angeles. And so we moved here to Albuquerque and Corrales specifically in 2017, at the end of 2017. My wife has family here, and that was the reason why we wanted to be in New Mexico and in Corrales specifically.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did, because if you were still in LA, and maybe the same happenstance would have occurred, but it was because we very aggressively grow my LinkedIn campaign. That was how we originally connected, and it turned out we had a number of connections in common. And when we started talking, we're really going after the same exact problems in marketing. So you were in the process of tackling exactly what boomtime does. So why is that? How did you get to that place?
Well, that's been a long journey too. I've been thinking about doing something similar to what boomtime is doing today for about 10 years. So I started one of my couple agencies in 2010 called the Marketing Distillery. And the Marketing Distillery was, at its heart, a social media marketing agency. We quickly pivoted to being a digital marketing agency, but our clients tended to be pretty high-end, and we operate as a boutique kind of company. And throughout that, process of growing the Marketing Distillery, I always thought that there was a space for marketing services that had been productized or that had been constructed in a way where you could scale them, which is something that's very hard to do for a marketing agency. So I thought about that for literally 10 years, and finally realized that the tools were out there in the marketplace, the technical tools to be able to do something that I had been thinking about for so long. And so when I moved to New Mexico, I started a company called the Content Refinery. You can see a theme in the way I named the companies, the agencies that I started. But that was meant to take advantage of all these new technology that could be used to scale up marketing services, digital marketing services specifically. And I think actually that's why we met, because I'd started that company and that got caught in your LinkedIn searches, and that's why we connected, I think. But to make a long story short, the Content Refinery was trying to be what boomtime actually is, taking a very different approach, but doing it so we could offer services in a very streamlined and process-driven manner that could also be scaled up relatively easily to small and medium-sized local businesses. I know boomtime is a bit different, but that was the genesis of the Content Refinery, and Therefore, very similar in concept, at least, not necessarily in execution, to what Boomtime has been doing and is still doing.
Yeah, and so you said something there that is really important to me, which is it's certainly possible for large companies to go out and and either develop the team internally, or there's a ton of great agencies. You can go hire someone who is great at doing this work for you. But the problem with that is that if you're running $1 million or $2 million or $5 million or $10 million a year company, that isn't so realistic anymore. And because marketing has gotten so much more complicated in terms of what it takes to execute on it consistently, we really got a very unlevel playing field, right? So the incentives for how you and I ended up here are really the same, which is I'm so passionate about small business, which is the driver of innovation and employment in the world, and in our country here in the U.S. And yet, if you can't effectively market, you're not going to be able to grow. You're not going to be able to continue to do those things. So being able to bring that level of sophistication and make it more accessible to smaller and medium companies that frankly need it even more is really what drives us to come together.
Exactly. And, I'm as passionate about marketing as you are probably about small businesses. I've recognized a long time ago that small and medium-sized businesses have a really hard time affording and integrating the services that agencies, digital marketing agencies, can provide. So the idea was exactly the same that you had, and it's something we're talking about here, which is, how can we provide services that are going to get the job done at a reasonable price and offer basically digital marketing in the box to these small and medium-sized businesses so they can, keep up with the times. As we all know, small businesses and medium-sized businesses tend to have people at their head who are incredibly busy, and digital marketing is not necessarily the first item on their agenda, their to-do list on a daily basis. But it's an incredibly important and becoming even more important part of their business. And so, the idea was to make them affordable, the services, and replicable across many small or medium-sized businesses. I think your approach, honestly, was much better than mine, in the sense that you created a great digital platform to actually do that. My idea was more about training people and using people at different levels of compensation to be able to do the job that Fuse, the platform that you developed, is actually doing in a much more streamlined and better and more efficient way.
Yeah, it's really always been. I mean, this is one of my other big frustrations with marketing is the lack of transparency in just this whole area, and that traditionally the way you solve every problem is to throw bodies at it. And if we don't get automation in the process, then we can never break out of that. But it requires more than just automation. You have to have the expertise for how to put that together. So that's what's really unique about what we've done is brought both of those things together, both the technology and the expertise. And you have a long history of doing the thing that I talk about all the time, which is taking because the work you've done that for a ton of small companies, but you've also worked with a number of large companies. And the whole approach that we have at Boomtime is let's go learn from the very best, and let's take that, productize it, put scale into it so that smaller businesses can put it to use. So let's talk a little bit about some of those interesting experiences that you have had in doing marketing for larger companies.
Yeah, definitely. But before we start on that, there's one thing I think that I'd like to add to what you just said about marketing, digital marketing specifically. And I think, it's not just technology and marketing skills, but it is also a very important thing that a lot of small businesses just don't do very well, is it's discipline. And I think the Fuse platform enables us to have that discipline in doing digital marketing. That's very, very important. Looking at the numbers, looking at analytics, at facts, and then applying that in a very in a very thorough process that makes sure that you leave no stones unturned and you do the best job possible given your resources you have. And I think it's pretty critical. But anyway, I'll get off my.
Well, it's that consistency issue that we talk about all the time, right? Like we see it over and over again. Like the number one reason that companies' marketing doesn't work is because they just don't have the consistency. You have to have it if you want to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. So back to my my experience with marketing. I don't know. I've done all kinds of marketings, as you know. I started, a lot of us in what we call these days traditional marketing. Doing the few things you could do at the time, doing radio and TV and print and PR, if you count that as marketing. And we're very limited number of marketing tactics that you could use back then, and evolved and did all kinds of marketing. I did direct marketing. I did loyalty marketing, catalog marketing, database marketing. you name it. Although I was raised more as a brand manager, a typical brand marketer at General Mills, and learned a lot of things there. But in '98, I got into the digital space with a company called City Search Ticketmaster, online, technically, and that was the aggregation of the .com side of Ticketmaster at the time, which was pretty small, that had been merged by a company called AIS, I think. Barry Diller was the head of the company at the time, into City Search, which was an online, I don't know, call it directory, if you want to call it that, of things to do and businesses to support at the local at the local level. So at the time I joined, I think there were about 8 cities that we had City Search in. By the time I left, we had over 40. And that was an interesting process, so I was kind of thrown in the fire here and tried to learn how to do digital marketing, which is not something I had done before, and managing, a slew of different marketing managers in each of the cities that we had. So it was the heydays of the .com boom, and a lot of fun and a lot of work, but it taught me an incredible amount of things about digital marketing. And then I evolved into other, I started working for startups and did product management, and so did a bunch of different things, still centered around marketing and more strategy, obviously, until I decided to go to switch from the corporate side to the agency side in 2006. With a company at the time that's called that was called Fanscape, and now it's part of Omnicom. At that time, we were independent, and we're doing social media marketing before anybody even knew or what social media marketing was, or even called it that. And there also, I learned a tremendous amount of things. But I think at Fanscape, what I really learned and actually not necessarily learned, but put in place and definitely increase my experience and my skill set with was analytics, and really how to use analytics to create campaigns, to strategize, and also to, at the end of a campaign, to tell our clients at Fanscape how well we were doing with the campaigns that we had done for them. And so this idea of putting an ROI on digital marketing was something that was not really done at that time, so I kind of started my own job almost there by creating a team at the behest of the owners of the company, and we did strategy and analytics. We did that for about 3 years with a lot of success. It allowed us to get bigger and bigger clients. So the company went from having, a lot of music-based clients, like artists and labels and things like that, to very large companies like M&M, AT&T, Verizon, and things like that. So Samsung was one of them as well. So we did, we managed to prove the value of what we were doing to those customers and get more and more customers as a result. But at the same time, and that's something that I don't think we've talked about, you might be interested in, is that what we were doing was it was digital marketing. We were doing email marketing, we were doing influencer marketing, we were doing content marketing, we were doing word of mouth marketing, although none of it was called that at that time. And we were sort of a little bit ahead of the curve, but at the same time, the Word of Mouth Marketing Association was created. And probably a year into my stint with Fanscape. And so they created this Word of Mouth Marketing Association, which we joined right away because we were doing word of mouth marketing. And they decided to publish a book after about a year and a half. The organization had been in place, and the book was about the ROI of word of mouth marketing. So somehow they found me. I don't think LinkedIn was very big at the time. It was probably 2007 to 2008. But I became the editor or part of the editorial team for the Word of Mouth Marketing Association ROI of Word of Mouth Marketing, which is a big book of case studies and techniques and templates that we published every year for a while. So you didn't know that probably, but that was kind of my early experiences with ROI and Word of Mouth marketing.
Well, this is in a time period when, frankly, people prior to this, they weren't trying to justify whether the marketing actually worked or not. It was just something you did. You spent money on it, and you hoped that it worked. And this is the beauty of the age that we're in now, which is we actually have the opposite problem. We have too much data. Now we've got to make sense out of that data. Like we've gone from living in the desert to drowning in it. But that's also where there's such huge opportunity. And I've always looked at this from the business owner's perspective. And if you're spending money on marketing, you really want to know what works. And one of the things that the head creative at an agency told me once years ago was that the number one job of the agency was to make sure that the business owner saw the ads, because then they would know it was effective. Now, that has nothing to do whether that actually brings in clients or not, but that's the frame of reference we're coming from. And we're trying to bring discipline to an area where that just, didn't exist before.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. And I lived through that period where, I was working with agencies who were selling me ads. So as a VP of marketing, for instance, and in corporate jobs. And so, yeah, I faced that a lot. And, for myself, at least, I'm very, very excited and happy that, this transition happened where, we have, as you said, torrents of data. That's, like a few years ago, big data was a big talk of in marketing analytics. But, big data has always existed. It's just becoming more and more data. And the data really enables us to choose the right tools. And there's so many tools today that you can use to make sure we deliver the best return on investment for our clients. And those clients, I think, I'm not sure they've been trained yet to ask the right questions, but I think, in coordination with them, we can really get them to understand the power of those analytics and also how to interpret them or interpret those analytics for them. So we can show them, the value of what we're doing and the value of digital marketing in general, which is something I spent a lot of time on at Fanscape, which is those companies were making transition from at least using part of their budgets and transitioning it from traditional marketing to digital marketing. And they had no idea how to decide whether that was a good investment or whether that made any kind of sense. And there's a lot of trepidation in those companies about, making that switch of moving those budgets from traditional to digital. So that was, kind of the incentive for us to really prove to them the value of what we were doing, because that meant more money being switched from traditional to digital. But and a lot of these companies, and even small and medium-sized businesses are the same. It's at some point, as the people we're talking to are going to want to see, whether what they're doing is working. And there's no real way to prove it other than showing what the numbers are. someone I worked with for a long time used to say, so if you can measure it, you cannot manage it.
Yeah, and the next important step in that is you've got to measure the right thing, because then you're gonna manage to whatever number you choose. And so one of the things that I've loved about having data aggregated across hundreds of like businesses is that you really get that insight. You see, okay, I know what the end result is: increased sales. And in the end, that's the only thing that matters. Do you generate more qualified leads that turn into sales?
Mhm.
But to be good at marketing, you've got to work your way back up the chain of data to understand, if I produce this result, I know it's going to take us to the next step. We're just working our way down the sales funnel. And each step has data that tells us whether we're making that progress. It then results in the one thing we care about, which is more sales.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, benchmarking is critical. I mean, numbers in and of themselves in a vacuum don't really mean that much. To understand really what's going on, you have to be able to benchmark. And this is why, when you can aggregate, like we can, a lot of data from different companies into an industry, if you want to call it that, then, and we can start to benchmark. And this is what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I think that's what's been so much fun about what we have done and where we're going is getting to live in that data, learn from it, see the patterns, see the changes as they're happening. Even when you do a really good job in one company, it's actually tough to understand what's happening, because all you have are the tests you're running in that one company. And so unless you're really good at, if you're large enough to have really good data and you're really good at formulating the tests that you're running, which, frankly, most marketers are not that great at running tests where you really learn something from it. Like every time we sit down to do a test, I ask myself ahead of time, well, if we get this result, what will I have learned? Versus if we get this result, what will I have learned? And so often you find out, well, I won't really have learned anything. So we need to redesign the test so that every iteration we're learning from something from that. And so there's so much power in looking at marketing from the lens of the data.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I mean, it's not just data, but it's actionable data, right? I mean, you can capture anything you want. If you don't know what you're going to be doing with it or what story you're going to be able to tell with it, then it's not really useful. It's almost like wasted data, right? So that that idea of like, before you even do any kind of test, knowing what we're going to be using the test for, and ultimately what the strategy is behind doing that test, is critical, because you need to set goals and objectives, measurable goals and objectives, before you do any kind of test. Otherwise, your test is a little bit meaningless.
Yeah, and this, I think, is one of the silver linings of the pandemic, which has really been more of an accelerant than it has been a change agent. So this process that was already happening has just suddenly been compressed in this time period, and there really isn't for most small businesses, there isn't anything besides digital marketing now. This is the only form of marketing, which overall is very positive, because it gets you to the right place much more quickly.
And it gets you to the right data much more quickly too, which is something that a lot of these people, that we're targeting these days and we're working with, they used to send, a couple sales guys and maybe a CMO or CEO for a few days to a conference or a trade show. Today they cannot do that, but the way they were, and I've had these discussions many times in my past with clients like that, we're like, well, we're doing all these trade shows, but we have no idea actually how much value they bring, and we can't really compute an ROI of what we're doing in those trade shows and those conferences. Now they do. What we do, we measure everything, we track everything, and now they have an ROI of their what you can call sales efforts through the marketing that we do for them. So I agree. It's this COVID-19 pandemic was a catalyst, not really a change maker. It was coming. It had to come. There is no way some of these businesses could justify those expenses any longer, because they couldn't tell whether they were working or not.
Yeah, so we were already well down the path, and now we're just much further than we would have been otherwise.
Yeah.
So JP, it's great to have you at Boomtime. I know our audience is going to learn a ton from what you have to share. So I'm looking forward to all the things that you're going to be doing on this podcast. Well,
thanks. I'm excited too. I think there's a lot of things that we can tell people. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about all of this marketing and analytics and digital marketing and driving profitability and sales for our clients. And so, I hope I can come up with some interesting things and walk people down this educational forum and make sure that we tell people things that they can use in their daily work.
I have no doubt. Thanks, JP.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the B2B Word of Mouth Marketing Podcast. Join us each Monday for new episodes and visit boomtime.com to listen to prior episodes and check out episode notes. Have a marketing question you want answered? Email us at podcast@boomtime.com or tweet us at boomtime_online and we'll answer your questions on air.